Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the topic of benefits of a web-hosted CE software solution. And happy to have Leslie Larrabee here with us today as our main presenter. And my name is Chris Murphy. I'm with Augusoft. And today's webinar is being brought to you by Augusoft. And for those of you who may not be familiar with us, we develop a tool or software tool called Lumens, which is an enrollment management system which is designed specifically for the continuing education industry. So before we get going though, I just wanted to run through just a couple of real quick housekeeping items. And so first off, just wanted to let you know that we are going to ask a couple of polling questions throughout the course of today's webinar. And you'll see those pop up on your screen, and then we'll give you a little time to respond, and then we'll read off the answers and then continue on with the presentation. We are recording the webinar today, as we do all of the best practice webinars that we do here at Augusoft, and we'll provide a link to the webinar recording as well as a copy of the slides, and that will be up on the website generally within the next 24 hours. So look for an email on that. Just ask if you need to step away at all from the webinar during any part of the meeting that you don't put us on hold, as sometimes that can do funky things with the GoToWebinar software. And then at the end, we will save some time for questions. And so if you've got any questions for Leslie, you can just send those in through the questions box on your toolbar on the right-hand part of your screen. So with that, I think we're ready to go, and we'll turn things over to Leslie. So welcome, Leslie.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that, that great introduction. And I just wanted to take a moment before we jumped in here to talk about this, just to introduce myself really briefly. I am currently working with Augusoft in a full-time capacity as both a product advisor and as an account manager. And so my product advising role really is centered around my long history in working in the contract training and continuing education marketplace. And so I've brought that real-world experience to Augusoft, and I'm helping them craft their products in a way that fits the needs of the practitioners that are going to be utilizing the software. I also have my own enterprise called Entrepreneurial Endeavors in Education, and that's a consulting organization, and I work with contract training practitioners across the country, as well as working in partnership with Learn in a similar capacity. So I wear multiple hats as I go about my day, but a majority of my time is spent with Augusoft. So with that as a background, I'm going to spend some time talking with you today about why having a web-hosted solution for your continuing education marketplace. Well, what are the benefits of being able to do that, both in general of having a web-hosted any kind of solution, but in particular why that would be really important for your continuing education practice. So let's jump in, and let's just start with a fundamental understanding. So we talk about it as web-hosted. It's talked about in the, in the technology market now as SaaS, which stands for Software as a Service. It can also be talked about as cloud computing. So you see it referenced a number of different ways. But fundamentally, what that means is that you as an end user access the information, access the application, access the data from your PC, laptop, mobile computing device through an internet browser, and that internet browser, that cloud, that information goes over to servers, software or application servers for computers that are not on your site. So this is you gain access to that information, data, and software through the internet. So that's the foundational kind of understanding. So I've got a polling question to ask. So if Chris, before we jump in, if you could go ahead and launch our first polling question.
Sure. And the question is up on the screen now, and it's kind of following on Leslie's previous slide, are you familiar with the term SaaS, or software as a service, as it's also known as? And just got a couple of options for you to choose from. And so we'll give you a little more time here to respond, and then we'll continue on.
I'm going to guess that a majority of you, if you aren't aware that you've used a SaaS solution, you probably have. If anybody's browsed on the internet, used Amazon.com, shopped at any of the myriad of stores that are online, you are participating in the SaaS world.
All right, let me pull up the results here. So looks like we've got kind of split down 3 ways here, that 1/3 have heard of the term or are familiar with the term, 1/3 have heard the term but don't really know what it means, and then another 1/3 have never heard the term before. So kind of a mixed response here.
Kind of a mixed response. Okay, well, even if you haven't heard of the term, for those of you who haven't, you've probably tapped into a SaaS piece of software, and literally, just like I said, going online and logging into Amazon and purchasing a book or a tape or a CD or whatever, you are utilizing software as a service. So it's called a bunch of different names. It's really not hugely important that you you have to know the technical jargon involved, but it is important for you to know that this is a way to access software solutions without them having to reside on your own computer. And so we're going to talk about why it's important, or what the benefits are of actually utilizing this kind of modality. So let's talk about that, because there are some significant benefits. So first and foremost, one of the things that you need to know about software as a service or a web-hosted solution is that there really is minimum upfront investment. And so one of the comparisons I like to talk about is the difference between investing in a campus-wide ERP system. So if you've got on your campus a full-grown ERP system, it is resident, so you've had to acquire a significant number of servers to handle the capacity. You've had hardware acquisition that you've had to invest in. You've had IT consulting and services that you are bringing to the table. You've had to make a hefty investment in the software that resides, maybe dependent upon the band, maybe dependent upon how many users, and the costs continue to escalate. So it is a big chunk of money, time, and energy that you invest in a system that's going to reside at your location. And so the hardware resides there, the software resides there, all the networking is resident there, so you have all that investment in your network, your local area network as well. And so when you talk about a web-hosted solution or a SaaS solution, you're talking about really a minimal upfront investment. You don't have to invest in new hardware. You don't have to invest in networking. You don't really have to have IT resources dedicated. So you are talking about as easy as going onto the internet and accessing that website. And so so you don't have to buy new computers. And so you really are utilizing your own laptop, desktop, tablet, mobile device, any place that you've got an internet connection. And so it really doesn't cost you much from an investment standpoint when you're getting going on a web-hosted solution. So to me, that's always a significant benefit. The other thing, one of the other benefits, and we're going to talk about 8 kind of general benefits involved. So number 2 is you really have, when you've got a web-hosted solution, instead of tapping into your own IT department and the level of quality and support that you're getting there, you're tapping into an organization who is dedicated to providing service for that particular software solution. So, and they understand the hardware that needs to be in place. They've got that hardware already. You're tapping into their hardware, their network infrastructure. You get software upgrades that come automatically. You get access to expert technical staff without it, without it having to be resident in your own facility. And your data is secure, so you've got, security solutions without having to have a whole system in-house, which a number of organizations, really can't afford that kind of hosted solution. So, but you can, with a SaaS solution, you get access to all that through the internet instead of having to have it resident in your own facility. So, depending upon the caliber of the organization, you're going to get significant high-quality service, and I can guarantee from Augusoft you get, with our software as a service solutions, you get significant high-quality service, not only from a customer support standpoint, but also from a access to our very high-quality technicians and hardware solutions, and as well as our network infrastructure. I mean, we enjoy a 99.9% uptime, which is relatively unheard of in the SaaS industry. But that's the kind of level of service you're talking about when you're working with a web-hosted solution. So this one may seem, for us that have worked in the world of the internet, seem relatively obvious, but I think it's important for us to point it out that when you are working with a web-hosted solution, it doesn't matter where you are. If you're working with an ERP system or any other kind of software solution that's resident in your own facility on your own computers, you generally don't have a way of accessing that information remotely. You've got to be at your PC, in the office. And if you do have remote access, it can be a little kludgy in terms of where you are. But in this case, anywhere with a SaaS solution, anywhere you are, whether you are, sitting, in your PJs in bed with your laptop on your knees, or you are, on vacation in Hawaii, or you are in your own office, you can access your software solution anywhere, so that you can access the software, you can access the data, and you can conduct business from anywhere. Now, some people think that's a benefit, and I know some people that might think, well, how accessible do I want to be? But the thing that's important to know is your customers can have access from anywhere. And so whether or not you as a staff member want to be available 24/7, 365 days a year, your software is available to your clients, customers, students, 24/7, 365 days a year. So it just doesn't matter. Location is now no longer relevant when it comes to talking about access to your software. So let's talk about maintenance for a moment. So to me, in my world of continuing education, having to maintain my data, having to maintain the hardware, the operating system, versions. I mean, even on my own laptop, having to, kind of take care of those kinds of things is challenging for me. And I don't want to have to worry about it for a whole system that's supporting my whole division. And so with a web-hosted solution, you really have low to no maintenance of the software, the hardware involved, protecting your data, backing up your data. I don't know how if you've ever had your laptop, crash on you, get the blue screen of death. But I don't know about you, but my heart really sinks, and so I have to have a backup strategy for my own laptop. In this case, when you're talking about mission-critical data and a mission-critical application like a continuing education software solution, you really are talking about data that you don't want to have to be the one to remember to do the backup to what hardware system or whatever. That is taken care of by your vendor. And so, and the other piece is you get your updates, your software updates. Those come in little bits and pieces. And so, in terms of a new feature, a new twist, a new to the way something operates, you get those upgrades regularly and consistently, and you don't have to do anything about it on your side. And so it really does take very little in terms of having to maintain a web-hosted solution. But you get the benefits of having a well-maintained, secure data environment for your software. All right. To me, this is huge. I don't know about you, but I have a challenge in terms of accessing my IT department, not at Augusoft, but I've run several continuing education operations in my past, and I will say that getting onto IT's dockets, their calendar, access to their expertise, consulting, I was always, almost always last on the list. And so when I found out that, I could gain access to expert technical resources, expert consulting resources that understood challenges that I'm facing from a technical standpoint, and I wasn't last on the list. I wasn't their second priority or third priority. I was their #1 priority. And so that to me is extremely beneficial when I'm working with a web-hosted solution. So I get access to their technical expertise. They know not only about the hardware, the software, the networking, the integration. They know about the business too that I'm in. So I get access to all those kinds of resources because they're focused on what I do for a living, as well as maintaining the technology and systems behind that. So if I wanted to, if I need to get something customized, I'm going to go to these folks and ask, and they'll know the best way to do those kinds of things versus having to not only teach my IT staff on campus what I do for a living, but and then also share with them why why it needs to get done. And I understand that IT departments in universities do have a need to focus on the largest part of business, which is the credit side of the house. And so I get that. So this is a way we can, as continuing education providers, gain that same kind of access without burdening our own IT department. So let's talk about something we call scalability and flexibility. So scalability means that this is a solution that can grow as I grow and maybe shrink as I face some sort of a downtime. So I can add new users, I can take away users, I can shift things around, I can tweak things, and so you want to work with a web-hosted solution that provides that kind of scalability and flexibility. So you're not penalized for growth in terms of the support that you get from a web-hosted solution. And so you can, immediately provide access to your new employees or staff whenever and wherever that's kind of required. And so you're able to also be able to, as I mentioned earlier, the flexibility part is wherever those players reside. Augusoft is basically has a virtual has virtual offices. I work with Augusoft, who's headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm able to work from a home office in Palm Springs, California. And I've got the same access to IT support services, got the same access to software. They were able to easily add me to their network through, because we are utilizing web-hosted solutions. I'm able to do remote demonstrations. I am bringing you this webinar over the internet using SaaS service called GoToWebinar, and I'm able to do that from my dining room in Palm Springs, California, because of this kind of scalability and flexibility that a web-hosted solution provides. So, service level agreements. One of the things that happens, of course, software, for those of you who've worked with any kind of software, whether it's web-hosted or not, is that software, occasionally has a bug or two in it. And so, and those are bound to happen. When you're working, though, with a web-hosted solution, if you've got a high-quality service provider like Augusoft, you're able to report those immediately, those issues, those bugs, those even wish list items that you might have about things that you want to have tweaked or changed just a little bit. And as your service provider, we're able to maintain and manage those almost immediately in terms of being able to provide you, as bug-free software, things that affect your ability to perform and produce on a regular basis. So, so we're able to provide very high-quality service levels in terms of being able to fix things as they happen. And so that can be somewhat challenging in an environment where it is hosted on the institution servers. Talk about fixing those bugs on a blink of an eye. Okay, so this is a big one. Number 8, I left the best for last. But before I share with you kind of about the benefits of related to working with your internal IT, I wanted to ask you ask you a polling question. So if Chris, you can pop up that polling question.
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. Everyone, you should now see the question up on your screen. What's the nature of your relationship with your IT department? And got a couple of different options for you to choose from. Be great if you all have a mutual love fest, but we also have other options like they help us when we need it, to struggle to work with them, or maybe you're not even sure that they have an IT department. So
yeah, I mean, if you've got a great relationship with your IT department, I think that's awesome. I just find sometimes that, particularly for a continuing education entity, may not be the case.
All right. Well, it looks like pretty much everybody on the call said that they've got a good relationship in the sense that the IT folks help them when they need it. So that's very positive.
Well, that's great. That's great. Let's talk about what are the benefits of working that can help ease the the relationship with IT can help make it even stronger if it currently exists. But this is something that this, to me, is one of the significant benefits, particularly for continuing education organizations. So when you're looking at it, you not only are kind of taking the pressure off of having to have that hardware and software in-house, and that you're kind of taking that off, that hardware and software networking infrastructure kind of off of your plate. You're also taking it off of your IT department's plate, and so that means that they can focus on the core business processes. And in any institution of higher education where continuing education is typically housed, you are finding that the main core business of your organization is really providing credit-bearing solutions, certificates, diplomas, graduate degrees, etc. And so that's the mainstay of business for the organization. And IT really, I think it's having a web-hosted solution for your continuing education department can help them stay focused on that without you having to sacrifice any level of quality or service from your own web-hosted solution. So not only can it alleviate that information, but alleviate those issues from your IT department. One of the then connected benefits is that you can redistribute any kind of budget that IT is having to spend on the continuing education world. So there's a financial benefit for the IT department to move things to a web-hosted environment for things that are non-core to the organization, which continuing education, well, it has significant benefit to the institution. Just looking at it from a budget standpoint, a majority of the budget is focused on the credit side of the house, and so which is where IT needs to focus, and so you can move not only the responsibility and burden from them, but you then allow them to redeploy those dollars where they need to go with the rest of the organization. And so you're finding that there's, not only did they not have to worry about your hardware and software needs, but they do get some significant benefit in terms of being able to redeploy their budgetary resources as well. So, one of the other things with an in-house system is that it has to be maintained. And so you have to do upgrades. Hardware evolves at a rapid pace in terms of new technology that's included in hardware. And so we're handling that for you from your web-hosted service providers are doing that for you. They're upgrading those systems for you. And so bringing you that technology without you having to invest in that. So that also takes the ease off of your IT department to have to maintain your hardware and your hardware and software equipment. So you get some significant savings kind of all the way around for your IT department. So I've kind of gone relatively quickly through kind of the 8 benefits, but just as a recap, you can web-hosted solutions, ease your upfront investment in terms of financial investment, doesn't sacrifice the level of service that you're going to get from a hardware, network, software, access to staff. It doesn't matter where you are, that you still have access to your data, your software, your systems. It doesn't take much in terms of the way of maintenance, but you still get a highly maintained system. You get access to technical and consulting service expertise. The solution is easily scalable, allowing you to add people, remove people as you need to. They can work from anywhere. You get your software patched, fixed, bug fixes, almost in the blink of an eye when you're working with a web-hosted solution. And IT will be grateful in terms of not only easing their burden of having to support your organization, but from a financial and resources standpoint. So those are kind of the 8 fundamental benefits of working in a web-hosted environment. And I want to just throw in there, of course, that Augusoft's Lumens products are web-hosted, and we are actually the leading provider. We came out with our web-hosted solution in 2000, and that was before they were even talking about terms like web-hosted cloud computing or even software as a service. So I'm going to open up your chat box for questions that you might have, and I'm just going to grab a quick look at the time just to make sure. Oh yeah, we've got some time to be able to address your questions. So I'm going to let Chris kind of facilitate our Q&A section. So Chris, if you've got questions that have come in, let me know and I'll do my best to address them.
Sounds great. Thanks, Leslie. Just wanted to remind everybody, if you do have any questions, you can send that in through the questions box on the toolbar, and we'll spend the last few minutes here answering any of your questions you have at this time. So feel free to send those in, and we'll get to your questions. Sometimes the system takes a little while to receive them, so we'll give you a little time here if you have any questions.
Right. And if you're just intrigued by the idea of a web-hosted solution and you're interested in taking a look at what Augusoft might be able to bring to your organization in the form of a web-hosted solution, we're happy to follow on with something more specific to your organization, be able to share with you what Augusoft has available in this kind of modality. So if your questions are around when can I see that software, we're happy to address those as well.
All right, so I've got one question here is, do you know if the system will be able to interface with CashNet?
Yes, our web-hosted, the Lumens product does interface with CashNet. That's your PCI compliant gateway that allows you to process credit card and ACH or kind of checking account processes. And yes, it does interface with that, as well as TouchNet and USA ePay.
All right. Is there any other questions that people have?
All right. Well, I'm going to turn them loose, it seems.
Yeah, I don't think we did such a great job during the presentation. You answered all your questions up front.
That's the way I'm going to take it.
Great. Well, we'll let people go here, but before you do go, just wanted to thank Leslie for taking the time to present a great webinar for us today. And if you do have any questions or want to follow up with Leslie directly, there is her contact information right there. And we're, of course, as Leslie mentioned before, always happy to give people a personal demo of the Lumens software. So if you are interested in seeing Lumens, we would be happy to set that up, and you can just contact our sales@augusoft.net email, and Eric would be happy to get that set up for you. As I mentioned earlier, too, we'll have a copy of this webinar and the slides up on our website probably within the next 24 hours or so. So with that, I think we're good to go. And so thanks everybody for taking the time this afternoon. Have a great day. Bye now.
Thanks, Chris. Bye, everybody.